On WSOC tonight, for 27 years, she sat on the bench of the highest court in the nation. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg not only becoming the second female to serve on the Supreme Court, but an American icon for past and future generations.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Justice Ginsburg, a fighter for equal rights who gave a voice to the voiceless.
Those doors that were shut tight against us are now open. So, long term, I remain optimistic.
Tonight, as people here in the Carolinas and across the country remember her, we're looking back on her lifelong mission for justice.
People ask me sometimes, when will there be enough women on the court? And my answer is, when there are 9.
WSOC Tonight live on Channel 9 starts right now. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Erica Bryant. We have a lot of important stories to get to tonight as this week comes to a close. But we begin with the devastating news that has shaken our community and the country, the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. For years, she battled several health challenges, but it was complications from her recent fight with metastatic pancreatic cancer that took her life. Our Joe Bruno is joining us live tonight. And Joe, it's important to not only remember all of her amazing accomplishments, but the lasting impact that she will have for generations to come.
A pioneer, a champion of gender equality, and a feminist icon. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died at the age of 87.
She was just the second woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg's true legacy may be as the legal architect of the equal rights movement. She graduated at the top of her class at Columbia Law School. Her career began in the 1950s when sexual and racial discrimination was a fact of life.
Not a law firm in the entire city of New York bid for my employment as a lawyer.
Eventually, she was hired by the American Civil Liberties Union. There, she would help lead a movement that changed the country, challenging laws that treated men and women differently in employment, housing, and government benefits. She was appointed to the High Court by President Clinton in 1993.
In behalf of the women of this country, she has compiled a truly historic record of achievement.
As a Supreme Court justice, she was best known for the far-reaching decision that struck down the Virginia Military Institute's men-only admission policy.
Those doors that were shut tight against us are now open. So, long term, I remain optimistic.
Justice Ginsburg was known as a judicial workhorse. She worked throughout her treatment for cancer in 1999 and again 10 years later. In January 2019, her recovery from surgery to remove cancerous lesions from her lung forced her to miss oral arguments, but she continued working from home. Ginsburg became something of a pop culture icon late in her life. This comedic but still relevant impression on Saturday Night Live.
You can't get rid of me!
Documentary titled RBG after a nickname given to her by fans, the 2018 film on the basis of sex, focusing on her push for equal rights. On social issues like civil rights, abortion, and separation of church and state, she was a consistent liberal. Yet she won the admiration of many conservatives for her grasp of the law and carefully considered opinions.
And Joe, a lot of reaction is starting to pour in tonight, including from President Donald Trump.
President Donald Trump was holding a rally when the news of Justice Ginsburg's passing came down. It wasn't until after that rally that a reporter informed him of her death. The music was actually still playing in the background when that went down. Here's what President Trump had to say.
I didn't know that. You're telling me now for the first time. She led an amazing life. What else can you say? She was an amazing woman. Whether you agreed or not, she was an amazing woman who led an amazing life. I'm actually sad to hear that. I am sad to hear that. Thank you very much.
This is video outside the Supreme Court tonight. The biggest political fight in years is about to unfold, with the shaping of America's highest court at stake for a generation. The Senate controls the confirmation process, and Senator Mitch McConnell says President Donald Trump's nominee will get a vote on the floor of the Senate. Representative Alma Adams tells me Democrats will need to prepare for battle.
This is the time for the world, the country, to mourn the loss of one of our heroes. And tomorrow, women and men of conscience will be ready for a fight. And it's one that I said Donald Trump will lose.
Republicans hold a 53-47 majority in the Senate. Vice President Mike Pence is the tiebreaker, and it takes 51 votes to confirm a Supreme Court justice. Erica?
All right, Joe, thank you very much. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden also spoke after an event in Delaware, and he offered his condolences and made the case that the voters should have a say in the process of appointing her replacement.
Tonight and in the coming days, we should focus on the loss of the justice and her enduring legacy. But there is no doubt, let me be clear, that the voters should pick the president, and the president should pick the justice for the Senate to consider.
Now, for some more perspective on all this, we want to bring in political expert Dr. Michael Bitzer. Dr. Bitzer, first of all, thank you for being with us tonight. We want you first to talk through a little bit of history for us, because our nation has in fact been in this situation before, where there was an opening on the court near the end of President Obama's term. So walk us through that time.
Certainly, when former Justice Antonin Scalia, who was the conservative cornerstone of the Supreme Court, passed away, President Obama nominated Merrick Garland on March 16th. But the Senate, then under Republican control, refused to take up the nomination. Ultimately, that seat was left open for nearly a year until President Trump nominated Neil Gorsuch on February 1st. So there is no constitutional provision that forces the Senate to take up a nomination, and this will certainly be a battle leading up to November and perhaps ultimately after November's general election.
And you talk about that battle. Can you just walk us through the basic steps of that process of filling a seat on the Supreme Court?
Sure, it is up to the president to make the appointment. Typically, he consults with the Senate. Some key senators, particularly the Judiciary Committee chairman, which is Lindsey Graham, will get consulted. But it is the president's pick to nominate a Supreme Court justice. They then go through the rigors of background checks and testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee before making a recommendation to the full Senate. The question is, will a few Republicans be willing to have and entertain a vote on this nomination so close to the presidential election? It will only take 4 Republicans to basically roadblock Mitch McConnell's pledge to have the vote by the president for the president on this nomination. We'll just have to see how it plays out over the next several weeks.
Yes, and I know just within the past week or so, President Trump actually already put out a list of names of those that he would consider for this now open seat. So again, we will continue to watch it, and we thank you for your political expertise sharing with us tonight. Thank you, Dr. Bitzer. Tonight, North Carolina's Chief Justice Sherry Beasley is reflecting on the loss of Justice Ginsburg, and she told me earlier tonight that she met with Justice Ginsburg several times.
I also met her when I was sworn into the Supreme Court. She came and met with the group of lawyers from Raleigh and spent quite a bit of time with us. And then she came to Raleigh just last year in September to speak with Meredith College students. And then she spoke with a group of Meredith College alumni at the Duke Energy Center in Raleigh. And I got a chance to spend some time with her there. And she was gracious and funny and still courageous and spirited. And It was just a wonderful evening.
And Chief Justice Beasley also shared with me her thoughts on the importance of Justice Ginsburg's legacy.
When she read a dissent from the bench, it was noteworthy. And people took note, not just because she was dissenting, but because in some ways she was adding to the jurisprudence of this nation, but also wonderfully espousing the importance of equality for all people, and notably for women and people of color. And I've received so many notifications since the news broke that she's passed away, with people just heartbroken. I mean, we've not had a lot of women to serve on our nation's Supreme Court, only 4, and of course she was the second. And I think in so many ways, the legal community and so many women really feel a sense of loss.
And at this hour, the tributes continue to pour in from all across the country. We have posted many of those inside our top story on our WSOC app, and look for complete coverage of Ginsburg's life and legacy tonight in a special edition of Nightline. Before we head to the break, certainly an incredible moment. Crowds in mourning singing Imagine right outside of the Supreme Court tonight. We'll be back in a moment. Tonight, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department is taking action after a man died while in police custody. Now, 4 officers and 1 sergeant involved in that arrest have now been cited for termination. We want to break down exactly how we got to this point. This is a photo of Harold Easter. It was back in January that police pulled him over investigating a suspected drug deal. They say Easter swallowed cocaine, trying to hide it from officers. Now, once he was arrested, investigators say he was left unattended in a police interview room for 20 minutes. During that time, he collapsed and suffered a seizure. 3 days later, he died in the hospital. Now, this is not the first time that CMPD has been criticized for how they follow policies and procedures. And it's not just an issue we've seen here in our area, but this has come up all across the country. That's why our Deshaun Brown is here going deeper into this issue for us tonight. Deshaun?
And Erica, I started with the former chair for the Civil Service Board, and that is the group that will hear the termination cases for these officers next. It's been 8 months since the January encounter between a group of CMPD officers and Harold Easter. And now Police Chief Johnny Jennings recommending those officers be fired after discovering they left Easter alone for 20 minutes and without the medical attention he desperately needed.
I've seen it multiple times, and every time it's very difficult to watch and to know that had our officers followed our policy, that Mr. Easter may be alive today.
The decision to fire those officers won't fall on the chief alone. It now goes to the Civil Service Board for review.
And then you essentially have what is a type of trial.
Attorney Jason McGrath is former chair.
So I was on the board for almost 7 years, and I was chair of the board for about 5.5. And I believe about half the time we ended up doing pretty much exactly what CMPD had asked for or recommended, and about half the time that we didn't.
McGrath says for a termination hearing, it's likely 5 members will hear the case. The board will then consider what the chief recommends, but their decision based on the evidence.
You know, these officers' lives are potentially could be altered forever. So could their families, but also people grieving in the community for the deceased individual. You know, they're looking for an outcome that they believe to be fair and just. And regardless of what the outcome is, some people are not going to be happy with it.
I am thankful that Brother Jennings, the chief, made what I know was a difficult decision.
Today's announcement almost 4 years to the date from the controversial shooting death of Keith Lamont Scott. Charlotte's Michael Duvall had already planned a peaceful rally this weekend to remember his life, along with that of protester Justin Carr, and most recently the son of his close friend, Jacob Blake. he survived the shooting in Kenosha, Washington.
All of them have names, and they have names in Charlotte. We don't have to go to Minnesota or Kentucky or somewhere else, right? Breonna Taylor. We can honor right here in Charlotte. You know, I also pray for the officers who have been impacted. The accountability needs to happen, but most don't leave the house thinking that something's going to happen that day.
And Deshaun, I know there are still 2 more key developments to come in this case, so walk us through the timeline for those.
Well, Erica, next week we expect to find out if the district attorney will charge any of the officers involved. And then after that, October 1st, that's when CMPD will release the video showing Easter's arrest and his detention. Back to you.
Thank you, Deshaun. Now we turn to the weather. 3 named storms in just a matter of hours today. It's certainly been a record year as far as storms. And Chief Meteorologist Steve Udelson is tracking the activity in the tropics for us and the taste of fall coming to our area this weekend.
Well, Erica, we'll talk about the history-making hurricane season in just a bit. Well, I want to start with the beautiful fall weather that we're going to enjoy. Behind Sally, winds are now turning into the northwest way up high, and that is dragging down some cool Canadian air. That's not just going to be with us tomorrow or Sunday, but it's our first extended stretch. It is going to last deep into next week. How about this for a weekend? Upper 60s on Saturday with some few clouds around, and on Sunday, nothing but sun. We'll be lucky to touch 70. Early risers tomorrow, we're going to be out exercising. Long sleeves for sure, maybe even a light jacket. Lower 60s then, mid 60s by 10 a.m. Not much of a warm-up. We'll be around 70 as we head through the day tomorrow. No shot for rain. The annual aeration and seeding of lawns going on. And don't forget the sunscreen this time of year. I know it's mid-September, but you need it. On to the tropics. For the first time since 1870s, we saw 3 named storms in one day. Tropical storm Beta is in the Gulf. Yes, we have officially run out of names in the Atlantic Ocean. We continue to see Teddy at near Category 3 strength. Farther to the east, we've got Tropical Storm Wilfred barely hanging on. And way out over the Atlantic, near Portugal, is Subtropical Storm Alpha. Our 7-day forecast, it features fall. Enjoy. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Steve. Ahead, another reversal from the CDC. The new recommendations now about who should get tested for coronavirus. Tonight, health officials in Cabarrus County have linked a cluster of COVID-19 cases to a single brewery. Our Joe Bruno talked to the co-founder of that brewery and breaks down what we know.
Cabarrus County health officials are investigating 8 cases of COVID-19 that they say are linked to the Old Armor Beer Company in downtown Kannapolis. Co-founder Kyle Lingefelt says the cases stem from Labor Day weekend. The brewery has since been deep cleaned 3 times and remains open.
It's tough, you know, and as a small business, and we're told you have a case, that is just cringing to hear.
Lingefelt says one of his employees tested positive and hasn't been at work since the 6th. The 8 people who tested positive all reported visiting the location, but health officials haven't said if any of them are in the same family or were in the same group.
We stated, you know, we can't prove that any of this was the source or this is where it's contract or it came from your employer, anything like that.
In addition to the deep cleaning, Old Armor requires masks whenever people aren't sitting. They also have reduced capacity and provide hand sanitizer.
If we see a weak link in our armor, then we're going to fix it. We're going to try to fix it.
Lingefelt says staff get temperature screenings and the brewery will do all it can to keep people safe.
We just want everybody safe and enjoy it here. That's really our goal.
The Cabarrus Health Alliance asking people who have been there over the past 2 weeks to keep an eye on their symptoms and consider getting tested. Joe Bruno, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
A study released by the CDC this month showed people who recently tested positive for coronavirus were twice as likely to have eaten out in the 2 weeks prior to getting sick. The data looks at 314 people who got tested for COVID-19 in July across 10 states, including North Carolina. 154 of those tests were positive. Those patients were asked about where they had been and if they wore a mask. 71% of them said they do always wear a mask in public. And of the activities they listed, most said that they had dined out. The CDC broke down the eating out risk level from lowest to highest. The lowest is obviously drive-thrus, delivery, and takeout. There is more risk if you eat on-site, outside, with tables spaced out. On-site eating with indoor and outdoor seating at a limited capacity is a slightly higher risk. This is what the current restrictions allow in North Carolina and South Carolina. And the highest risk is on-site eating in with no capacity or spacing regulations. The CDC has updated its guidelines for who should and should not be tested for coronavirus. We've seen this happen not once or twice, but now 3 times. And just today, the agency rolled back again on controversial changes that it made last month. It is now going back to its initial guidance, which says anyone in close contact with someone who has been infected should get tested, even if they are not showing any symptoms. Now, this is a reversal from a change that was made in late August. Then the agency said if you'd been in close contact with someone with COVID but did not have symptoms, a test was not necessary. This move was heavily criticized by doctors and health agencies who know just how important testing is and how much it plays into trying to contain the virus. We'll leave you tonight again with the heartbreaking news about the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She passed away tonight from complications from pancreatic cancer. Justice Ginsburg was appointed to the Supreme Court by then President Bill Clinton back in 1993. She was the second woman appointed to the court and served more than 27 years. I want to show you again these live pictures tonight from right outside the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. Mourners gathering there to pay their respects. For complete coverage of Ginsburg's life and legacy tonight, there will be a special edition of Nightline. Also, make sure to tune in tomorrow morning here on Channel 9 for Eyewitness News starting at 5 a.m. for any overnight developments. Thanks again for joining us for WSOC Tonight. Have a good night and a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next week.